Hello, everybody, and a very good afternoon, and welcome to the Astrolabs webinar on 5 levers for organic business growth. We're going to give it 2 or 3 minutes before we kick off the webinar. In the meantime, I can see there's a couple of people here who we've had the pleasure of having on some previous webinars. Bruce Wayne, my favorite superhero, is still a part of this team, which is great. Sisania is on there. Good to see you guys. This is not going to be, and I'm sure some of you remember from the previous webinars we've done with Astrolabs as well, this is not meant to be a lecture or a talk. This is going to be a workshop, so we're going to be having some interaction during this workshop. I will also be having you go through a let's call it a math exercise for now, and I am going to ask some people to perhaps volunteer themselves as mental math professionals, and that would be quite fun to see. So while we'll give it another 1 or 2 minutes while everybody's joining, can I ask you to make your way to the chat box over to the right and just put in 2 things. Number 1, are you back at the office? Or are you still working from home or working remotely? And number 2, what's one of the biggest takeaways that you've had business-wise over the last 2 months? So just pop in some thoughts, and I'd like to kind of get a temperature check of where everybody is. Are you back at the office? What have you learned in the last 2 months or over the last 2 months? Hi, Baba. Working from home, good. Still home, all right. Cool. Is there anybody who is actually at the office? Business has been very good in the last few months. That's excellent. Manny, what kind of industry are you in? Do you think it has to do with your industry, or is it, are you an exception to the rule? And everybody else, how's business been? Has it been up? Has it been down? What kind of takeaways have you seen? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Yep, that's a very powerful quote. And this one is less about maybe getting punched in the face and like taking a steel chair to the face. Really, yeah. So a lot of people are still really dazed, still reeling. Good. What other learnings have you had? Feel free to share them. It's 3:03. We'll give it another minute and a bit. So we'll start at 3:05. So what kind of learnings have you had, and how's business been going? Yeah. Feel free to message privately or publicly, by the way. However you prefer. I can see some private messages are also coming in, which is fine. I'll read them out if they're not personal. Otherwise, if you're okay to have everybody see your message, please message to the group. Learn augmented reality. That is a learning, mate. That is the future of the world. We're going into a mixed reality. And it's great that you're learning some of these things, yoga and cooking. We had a 3-hour planning session this morning with clients, and one of the clients said that she had, for the last 2 months without fail, practiced yoga every single morning at 6:30, which is pretty great dedication. Maha, welcome. The question is, are you working from home or are you back at the office? And what learnings have you taken away over the last 2 months? Manny, I like how you've got 2 ventures, one's up, one's down. They're balancing each other out quite well, it seems, which is great. Okay. Attended lots of interesting webinars, which is very nice. Yes, there's been no shortage of webinars. I think we've gone from death by PowerPoint to death by Zoom. It's easy to get a bit overwhelmed, and it's nice that there's so much happening online, but it is also how much you're going to be actually learning and implementing going forward that's going to make the difference. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, So with that, I hope this webinar is going to be one that you not only enjoy listening to, but also take away from and implement. And if you can apply some of these things that we're going to be discussing today into your business and start seeing the results for that, it would be excellent. Let's jump straight into the content for this workshop. Now, all of you are seasoned business professionals. I'm looking at the names over here. Many of you are you've been in this game for a while. Some startups, that's all right. You're about to have a very, very steep learning curve as to what it means to be an entrepreneur. We have Manny, for example. Manny's video is turned on over here. I'm sure you saw that glorious white beard. I've had 2 white hairs as well over the last 2 months. So, but this is all part and parcel of being an entrepreneur and being a business leader, right? Stepping out there, putting your neck out, and taking some big risks. While there will always be a lot to do, and I'm going to show you also the Kaizen system so you understand the range of things that you need to be working on consistently, it does help to be able to narrow down and say, you know what, if I do A, B, and C, we're okay. And being able to identify what that ABC is, particularly in times like this, when everything is everywhere, with some things left over, and it can become really overwhelming, really confusing, really debilitating as to, oh my God, everything's going down the drain. What do I do? So that's what we're going to try focusing on today with these 5 levers. And perhaps to emphasize this thing that I just said, or this concept that I just said, is this amazing quote by Michael Porter, where he says the essence of strategy does come down to choosing what not to do. I'm sure all of you have to-do lists, multiple to-do lists that are long and never ending, and they just keep getting longer and longer until one day you just get tired and delete the whole file or crumple up the whole paper and throw it away and start again. And that's just because of how much that we take onto our plates. But if you really want to understand strategy, you have to understand what is not your requirement, what you don't need to be doing, whether that's delegating or giving it to a freelancer, or indeed abdicating it altogether, which is one of the keys of successful time management. By way of introduction, there are some people over here who I have not had the pleasure of meeting before. So just by way of a very quick introduction in terms of who I am and what I've done, this is a throwback picture to when we were allowed to have events in person. I don't know if you remember those old days when you could meet other people and not be scared. Pardon me, my screen has just decided to get frozen here. There we go. And this was also back to when I had hair. It's been a pleasure over the last decade or so to have been doing what I'm doing right now. I've been running the Kaizen Consulting Group for just under a decade now, and we work with funded startups, established SMEs, and ambitious and agile corporates that want to continue their own growth and understanding and realizing their own potential. We've worked with well over 1,000. In fact, the number's gone up since I wrote this. Over 1,000 different businesses over the last 10 years from a range of industries. But the range of issues that they've had and that what we've worked on has actually been quite small. And it comes down to the areas of successful business and areas that the principles of successful business, which I'd like to share with you in a second. Personally, if any of you are on Instagram, please connect on Instagram as well as LinkedIn. I am also an entrepreneur. I also do run other businesses and other ventures. I run 3 businesses that I manage myself. I'm part of several other businesses. And my personal vision, and this is something that I hold myself up to, is unlocking potential and catalyzing sustainability. I do believe in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that we need to decouple environmental damage with economic growth. We can't continue taking more and more from this planet and the limited resources. And I've made it my mission to try and help businesses achieve continuous growth while reducing the impact that they're having on their circumstances around them and on their environment around it. When I talk about coaching businesses, here's maybe a 1-sentence definition for what I would consider a successful business. Now, you don't have to agree with me on this. It's possible that you have a different opinion, and that's absolutely fine. But the way that I would define a successful business is one that has the potential to continue growing and staying profitable, even without the business owner being part of the equation. And I think this is fundamental. So it's a commercial, meaning it's trading. It's profitable, meaning it's making extra money. Enterprise, obviously involved in business, that can work without you as the owner, or it's not limited on any one person. You know, your typical organizational charts look like a pyramid with bulk of the team at the bottom and the key decision makers that sit at the top of the pyramid. And that's where we would like to think we are, you know, we're at the top of this pyramid. But realistically, particularly within startups and SMEs, the truth of the matter is it is a pyramid, but it's kind of shaped like this, not upwards. And you are at the peak of that pyramid, but that peak is down here. It's not at the top. So you're at the top of the pyramid, or at the tip of the pyramid, but it's shaped this way. And if you're removed from the equation, or if you and your co-founder are removed from this equation, this entire thing comes tumbling down. And you'd notice the difference between startups and some newly established SMEs and well-established businesses is that this risk of one or two people's removal crashing the entire system doesn't exist in bigger and better businesses. So I would like you to just keep this in mind. How can we get this business to the point where it's no longer heavily reliant only on me? I can see some comments coming through on the chat that are echoing what I'm saying. So please do continue the sharing comments, and please put it to everybody so everybody can see the lovely comments that you're sharing. I said at the beginning that there's certain key principles that successful businesses adhere to, and as long as these principles are being obeyed and being followed, everything else works quite well. I'd like to show you what those principles are. Now, please do not be duped by the simplicity of this structure. It's important to remember that principles don't have to be too many. There were only 10 commandments, and the entire length of those commandments were a couple of hundred words, whereas the law books of many countries goes into the thousands and thousands of pages. I think the EU regulation on the import of cabbages is something like 36,000 words. All right, and the 10 commandments, which is how people should live their entire lives, was a few hundred words. So just because it's shorter doesn't mean it's weaker. On the contrary, these 5 areas that you see here are fundamental and imperative to any successful business's sustainability. The 3 that are in the white in the middle, you see finance and growth on the upper left, operations and scale on the upper right, and people and performance just below them. That white circle over there represent the 3 areas that businesses have to get right if they want to be able to survive. Imagine a 3-legged stool, and if any of those legs were weak or short or wobbly, you would hesitate from keeping something fragile on top of that stool. You would definitely not allow your children to sit on it. You would not climb on it if you needed to reach, let's say, a shelf above your cupboard, or if you needed to get some height. You wouldn't step on a wobbly stool because the risk of damage or getting hurt would be too high. Yet within businesses, we see that this 3-legged stool that businesses are built on, these 3 legs are weak. Sometimes all 3 of them are weak. And forget putting one thing fragile on it. We're putting our entire livelihoods, our hopes, our dreams, the safety and security of our family, the livelihood of our employees, our relationships, our reputations, our brand. All of that is sitting on this stool, which has got shaky legs. It's a really dangerous approach to take. So first things first, those 3 areas in white have to become really, really solid. What we're going to be talking about today fits very squarely in the finance and growth box. Finance and growth is everything to do with money, whether it's the generation of, which is marketing, or the collection of, which is sales, because marketing's done a lot of the heavy lifting. Sales goes in and closes that lead, or it's the management of, which is to do with your accounts and audits. All of these come under finance and growth, and that's what we're going to be talking a lot about today. The second area is operations and scale. Ops and scale is to do with business efficiency and execution and productivity and profitability on work, and how quickly that business can grow with regards to delivery. It's one thing to be able to sell a client onto your potential, but once that deal is signed, you have to deliver. The product has to work, the service has to be of the quality that the client was expecting. And if you aren't able to maintain that standard or quality or delivery expectations, if you're not able to maintain those, your clients will start dwindling. So you really want to ensure that the level at which you're delivering is always high, so that your clients, your older clients come back to you and they talk about you to new clients. If your business does grow and you need to be able to do more, say you have 10 people, you have 10 employees and you can take on one project. Big example, maybe a lot of you can't relate to the project and size specifically, but just conceptually, if you need 10 people to execute one project, as soon as you have one project in hand and you've started executing, and now you're getting ready to sell the next project, you have to hire another 10. And then for the third project, you have to hire another 10. So this is what we call linear growth, which is not bad. It's a nice thing to have. But scale comes from exponential growth, meaning if we need 10 people for one project, can we do 2 projects with 15 people? Can we do 5 projects with 21 people? And that's when the growth curve starts getting really steep. And that kind of exponentiality or scale is what allows you to go miles ahead of the competition. The bottom of those 3, or the not bottom in terms of importance, just that's how it is visually, is people and performance. It's to do with what process are you following to get the best people onto your team. Once they're there, how do you get them to perform to their potential? How do you get them to give their best? What are you doing to ensure that every single person in your team, because this time, perhaps more than any other time, makes you realize that you might be carrying too much fat in your business, and fat gets trimmed first. So whenever you go on a diet, the first thing to start going away is unhealthy fats. So does the business have any unhealthy fat? If it does, get rid of it. But that what stays, how do you ensure that that's coming out to its peak performance? How do you ensure that everybody's playing to their potential? Because that's what's required. Now, these 3 are those fundamental pillars that will allow your business to be solid and steady in terms of growth. The other 2 areas, there's technology and innovation. So technology powers a lot of what you do. Even when we're going to be going into the examples and the further discussion of these 5 levers, you're going to pick out very quickly that without technology, it's impossible to grow. In fact, it's impossible to do a lot of these things without technology. Operationally, you'll be hampered if you didn't have a good operational overview or organizational overview. People and performance-wise, you would be completely hamstrung if everything had to be done only by face-to-face communication, and you did not have the messaging and communication tools that allow you to work so smoothly. This pandemic would have been multiple times more disastrous if we did not have technologies that allowed us to work remotely and work from home, as many of you are still doing. Innovation is, how do we continue staying relevant? How do we continue pushing the envelope? How do we continue staying forefront, both in terms of the customer's mind and in terms of the industry? Because if you're a laggard, if you become one of the many, you're forgotten. So one of the terms that you're going to hear me talking about a lot going forward is the word niche. How do you find your niche, and how do you need to continue innovating to maintain that niche? And then at the core, at the heart of every successful business is the leadership that exists, even if it's a 1 or 2 man company or a 100,000 man company, doesn't matter. What is the leadership that exists at the core of this organization? And what is the culture that permeates through this company? The culture is not what it says in the documents. The culture is what is lived through the organization. If you have a culture of fear, it doesn't matter if you talk about empowerment. If you have a culture of being dishonest to a customer, it doesn't matter what you claim in your brand values. So your culture is what is lived and what is experienced by employees and team members and the external market alike. These are the 5 areas that go into making any successful company. Every industry would have some uniquenesses. Every different geography, every different size may have some special uniquenesses that others won't relate to. But by and large, you'll find it'll fit into one of these 5 principles. And that these principles have been developed over many years and working with hundreds of clients and from many hours of studying and learning. But I will say this is not gospel. So if you find yourself saying, I'm not sure about this, or I don't agree with that, that's fine. I'm not going to feel bad if you choose not to agree with any of these. As long as you know what you're doing and you're happy with it, go for it. This is a system. If it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't work for you, equally awesome. This is the summary version of the system. I'll give you a snapshot of what the system may look like when we start working together. These are some of the elements that go into the execution of the areas that we're talking about here. And obviously, this is not exhaustive. There's much more to do. But each one of these 5 areas has specific outcomes and milestones that need to be achieved for those benefits to be realized by the organization. With that, I'd like to go straight into the 5 levers for today. Now, on the top left, you see finance and growth. Most of what we talk is going to be within that space, but it will touch on areas that are in the other 5 areas as well. Let me start off by asking a question, and I'd like you to get back into the chat box. I see some questions have come in there. Forgive me if I don't answer them as soon as they come in. I will try and get to them before we wrap up today. So keep the questions coming. But in the meantime, could you get to the chat box and answer me one question? In your opinion, what is the meaning of the word niche? When I say niche, and I said it before as well, what comes to your mind? Just put it into the chat box. What does niche mean to you? Please remember to put it in, make it public, not a private chat. It's just so that everybody gets to see it. Unique, a highly specific group, target audience, differentiation, differentiating strength, space where you specifically provide the most value, unique product again, few clients, a group that has specific needs. All of these are excellent, and all of these are right. Certain market, no competition, you're very close. Corner, yeah. So it's that space that you can own, right? All of these are very, very correct. I'm going to introduce a different translation for the word niche. All of these are correct. I would like you to think about it in a different way, in a niche way. I would define niche as the point at which you're no longer competing on price, and put that into an example, into a specific situation. If you wanted to buy a new car and you went to Zonda, you want a Pagani Zonda, or you went to Koenigsegg, right? And you said, okay, I want one of these, which is one of 25 models produced worldwide. And you said, yeah, but $2.5 million is too much. I can get a Corvette for this much, or I can get a Toyota for that much. They will probably turn around to you and say, please go get a Toyota. It's a great car. Go get a Toyota. Don't tell me that because somebody else is selling what they claim can be the same as ours for that price, that means we should meet our price. We should reduce our price to meet them or to match them. Do this in your own industries. How many times have you had a prospect say, look, I love what you've come back with. I love your proposal. We want to work with you, but that guy's giving it to me for 60% of what you are quoting. If you can match that price, I'll go with you. If you can't, I'm going with him. And how does that make you feel? It sucks. It really sucks. It's happened to me. It's happened to, I'm sure, every single business owner out here has had this conversation at some point. When you find your niche, you can get to the point where you can say, I understand that you have a cheaper option. And if price is such a big factor, I would recommend that you go with them instead, because we're not meeting that price. And being able to hold your guns, stick to your guns in those kinds of conversations is what helps your market understand what your niche is. I remember clearly we had one proposal that we had submitted. We spent a long time on this exercise to a global company. We're talking to their EMEA headquarters that was here in Dubai, and we gave in a coaching proposal that they had asked for after many hours of work. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to be able to relate to this very, very well. And we put in a proposal, and we quoted, so it was for a leadership coaching program for a fairly senior member of their team. We quoted 14,000 dirhams per month for 6 months. And so that makes it about 84 something thousand dirhams. And the CEO calls and he says, look, love what you do. We really want to work with you. But it's come down to you and this one other lady. And we either go with you at 14,000 per month for 6 months, or that lady has quoted us 16,000 dirhams for 6 months. So 1/6 of your price. And I said, dude, there's no way in heck we're meeting that price. He said, look, I want to work with you, but the price disparity is too large. And I said, look, it's fine. I understand completely. Please go ahead with them. And in 6 months' time, we'll speak again. And this happened June last year. In February this year, we started the workshop series for their team, and we'll hopefully continue working with them. Not every business is going to end up coming back to you. So are you going to stick to your guns? And does your market understand why you're charging what you charge? Somebody in your industry is charging more than anybody else. Why not you? Somebody in your industry is making a heck of a lot of profit per sale. Why can't that be you? I'm sure there's reasons, and if you're happy with those reasons, then that's fine. But if you're not happy with those reasons, perhaps we can try exploring some of them today. So if niche is the point at which you're no longer competing on price, that begs the question, what is it that as a business sets you apart? And when you can make your differentiation abundantly clear, you want somebody to say, you know what, I might not be able to afford you, but I want to. And even if I can't work with you now, as soon as I have the finances, I'm coming back to you because you are exactly what I need. And I'm going to now illustrate this with an example. I know there's some people here in this workshop, myself included, who would take that Beetle any single day, right? If you ask me, would you rather have the Porsche or the Beetle? My heart would go out to the Beetle. It's such an iconic car. But on the racetrack, which of these two would perform better? And it's hands down, the Porsche would smoke the Beetle on the racetrack. What's interesting about this example is while these two may look like completely unique vehicles, the first Porsche was built on a Volkswagen Beetle chassis. So the Beetle was taken, the engine was taken out, a new engine was stuck in, and the Porsche was born. And that change, the skeleton is the same. It's what went into that skeleton that was different. That change has meant a completely different trajectory for the Porsche as compared to the Beetle. And that begs the question, what is it that is required to change in your business to allow that level of performance increase? And we're going to talk about the business chassis right now. If I were to ask you, and again, please get down to the chat box and answer this question. As a business leader or a business owner, what are some of the most important numbers that you need to be aware of? Just pop down some thoughts in the chat box, please, and then I'm gonna move on from here. What are some of the most important numbers for any business leader to be aware of? So a lot of revenues and sales coming in. Revenue, turnover, revenue, sales, cash flow, financial ratio, that's interesting. Market size, profit, revenue. Bad debts. That's a number that keeps you awake at night, my friend. Reach is good. Okay, all of these are correct. And the bulk of the answers went towards what I was what I was expecting to see. So here are 3 numbers that always pop up when we ask this question. How many clients do we have? How much revenue we're making, and what percentage of that is staying? How much profit are we generating? Because you are in business for profit, you're not in business for revenue unless that is your business model. Most businesses are in business for profit, not just activity or revenue. Now, all of these numbers are really important, but there's something wrong with all of these numbers, and as well as some examples that were given in the chat box, which is you would only know these numbers after the fact. You would only know how many clients you have at the end of your billing period. You only know how much revenue you have at the end of your accounting cycle. And you only know your profit at the end of your financial reporting cycle, whether that's monthly or quarterly or annually. So here's a good question. Are cash flows not more important than profit? Yes, they are. Cash flow is king. Cash is not king, cash flow is king. And a lot of people don't quite understand that. For the purpose of this example, you'll see why cash flow isn't showing up, but that's a really, really good question. Now, I'm going to introduce these 5 levers, and we're going to have a little exercise. And at the end of this exercise, I'm going to give you 5 or 6 minutes to do this exercise for yourself. If you'd like to preempt me, then feel free to run these numbers on your own business as we're talking. But I want you to understand the principle that goes into this before you jump into the calculations. The calculations are easy, and it's not going to be too complicated to do. I want you to stay with me as we do this. There are 5 things that go into every successful business. And when we're talking about the growth of this, these are the 5 levers that go into it. We start off with the number of leads that a business is generating. A lead is somebody who is interested in doing business with you. They are not necessarily a paying customer just yet. They have signed up to your newsletter, or they attended an event that you ran, or they came to your exhibition, or they've called your office, or they've asked for a quote. They've done something to show interest. So they're not passive recipients of marketing, and they haven't put their hand into their pocket just yet. They're somewhere in between. You take the total number of leads that you have, and you multiply that by the conversion rate. Now, here I'm talking about a single conversion rate. So for example, we put out a marketing campaign, and we have 10 people that respond, of which 1 person ends up buying. So our conversion rate is 10%. But the process in between those 10 people saying I'm interested and us actually putting a proposal on the table, maybe that has multiple steps in between. So there's conversion rates between each one to also be aware of. So it could be interest to first meeting, you have a 98% conversion rate. So everybody who's interested has that first conversation with you. From first meeting to second meeting, you have a 20% conversion rate. So you're losing a lot of people here. And then from second meeting to proposal is 20% or 100% from here. And then sign on is 50%. So you start off with 10, you ended up with 1. But you're losing people in between your first and second meeting. That's where you need to focus. Overall, you have a 10% conversion rate. In this case, we'll use overall conversion rates. So total number of leads multiplied by the percentage of people that say yes gives you the number of customers that you have, or the number of clients that you have won. You take these number of clients and you multiply them with 2 metrics, with 2 factors. The first one is, on average, how often do these customers come back within a certain time? Now, you could do this monthly, you could do this annually, you could do it over lifetime. It really depends on your business model. If you are in something that has a higher number of transactions, retail, F&B, etc., you might be able to do this on a very short timeline. If you do something, pardon me, I'll try and slow it down. If your business is quick sales, for example, Carrefour or Union Co-op or Spinneys, you would go to your groceries at least once a month. You'll most likely do it at least twice a month. And if you're like me, maybe you do them every week. So my local supermarket has 4 transactions from me every single month. So over the year, they have 48 transactions from me, right? So that's what number of transactions is. Whereas my garage would maybe have me come in 2 or 3 times a year to do a service. And the car dealership that I bought my car from maybe will see me once every 3 to 5 years, because I'm not buying a car that frequently. So number of transactions changes based on your industry. You decide what is acceptable and what is not. That's the first metric. The second metric is, on average, what is the value of every sale? So total number of customers, how many, multiplied by how many times, multiplied by how much each time would give you your revenue, your overall turnover, your sales for the period. You obviously, as a business, do not get to keep 100% of that revenue. There are overhead, there are costs, there are salaries, there is rent, there is suppliers, there's cost of doing business. All of these things go into your expenses. So you take your total revenue and you multiply it by the percentage that you are able to maintain. So total money generated versus the amount that we get to keep, or the percentage we get to keep, that gives you your take-home profit. The 5 levers are the 5 metrics on this page that are in purple. What you will have noticed is one of the more popular answers of how many clients, revenue, and profit all come after the equal to sign. They are all results of something else. And if you want to increase revenue, you want to increase profitability, you want to increase number of customers, you have to increase what goes into making them. You can't force the outcome. How many times have you ever sat, whether in your own business or in another business, where the manager is pounding the table saying, we need to increase revenue 15%. Okay, how? We'll do exactly what we've always done. How are we going to have anything different? No, you have to do more meetings. You have to make more phone calls. And it never usually works. So I'm going to continue on this example for a little bit. So number of leads and conversion rate goes into making a customer. Total number of customers, number of transactions, and average sale value goes into your revenue. And then of that revenue, the margin goes into your profitability. There is perhaps no business you can come up with, or any industry you can come up with, that doesn't have these 5 as part of their fundamental business model. Perhaps the timelines between them will be very quick. If you're talking about an impulse buy, the candy shop in Dubai Mall, you park and you're entering the store, and there's that little convenience store on the side. Buy a bottle of water, buy some chocolates, buy some chewing gum. That's an impulse buy. From number of leads to customer is a very short process. If you're buying a house or if you're making an investment, the conversion cycle is usually a lot longer. So you might be able to identify differences in industries as with regards to how these work, but generally all 5 of these are there in every single industry. I am now going to take you through some numerical examples of this. I'd like you to stay with me, and if anybody is willing, unmute yourself and jump on board as a volunteer to test your mental math. I'm going to start this. If I hear anybody say, yep, I'll do it, we will have a mental math volunteer. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so if nobody wants to do it, that's fine as well. You can just check my numbers. Okay, I'm going to pop in some numbers. Do we have a volunteer? It would be so much fun to pick on somebody right now.
I volunteer.
Hi, I have your name
Hello.
as Preeti. Is this Preeti?
So I'm actually on somebody else's login. My name is Dipendra. Dipendra is my name actually.
Pardon me. The connection is really poor, so I'm really sorry.
The tag is different.
I'm really, really sorry. I'd love to have had you do it, but there's some really bad static on the line, and I'm not able to hear you very well. It's fine. Let's just proceed with this. So I'm going to pop in some numbers over here, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and I want your answers in the chat box. Again, preferably publicly, otherwise keep it private. Here's an example business with example metrics, okay? This business has 4,000 leads over the year. They have a 25% conversion rate. That means at the end of the year, they have how many customers? 1,000 customers. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, I should have put my hand up to say, I can do this mentally. We have 1,000 customers. These 1,000 customers, on average, will come back twice every year, and they will spend, on average, $100 per transaction. This company's revenue at the end of the year is $200,000. This particular business manages to maintain a 25% net margin. So 25% of $200,000 is $50,000. This company takes home $50,000 at the end of the year as profit. Good or bad, doesn't matter. This is where this company is today. Here's my question, and I'd like your answers in the chat box, please, so get ready with this. How long would it take if we needed to increase each of those areas in purple by just 10% each? So we're going to work on all 5 of those areas. The strategies to implement each are available. There's hundreds of strategies that we use with clients. There's strict accountabilities, and every number is tracked, so we know exactly what's happening. There's transparency, and there's commitment. You know, people are willing to put in the work. So, question: in number of months, how long would it take to increase each of those 5 areas by 10%? Just put down your numbers in the chat box, please. Number of months. Yep, 2, 1. Anybody else? 6, it's fine. Anybody else? How long would it take to increase these 5 by 10% each? Depends on the business. Yes, it does depend on the business. That's why this is just an example. 12, 3, lovely. Okay, let's go with 12. 12 seems to be the longest one so far. 1 month. I love your optimism, and you're not too far off. Let's say 12 months. It takes 12 months to increase each of these by 10%, and let's see what that means for the organization. So 4,000 leads will increase by 10%. That makes it 4,400, and a 25% conversion rate will improve by 10%, which means 27.5, because it's 10% off, right? Not 10% of the on 100. So 10% more leads, 10% better conversion rate. How many clients now? If you're saying 1,100, you're wrong, because business compounds, life compounds. It's not plus, it's multiply. So 4,427.5 gives 1210 customers, which is way more than 10% on the original number of customers. Number of transaction goes from 2 to 2.2, and 0.2 in this case means 1 more transaction every 5 years, which I think is very doable for most businesses. And $100 in terms of average transaction value becomes $110, which nobody would even realize a $10 addition on a $100 bill. The revenue, anybody's mental math is good enough? 292,820. Now you're probably thinking that is a heck of a lot more than 10%, and you're absolutely right, because it compounds. It doesn't just add. 292,820, margins become 27.5 instead of 25. Take-home profitability for this business at the end of 12 months is 80,525. That number is not just more than 10%. It is a heck of a lot more than 10%. It's a 46% revenue increase, and it's a 61% the examples. If I had asked, how long would it have taken for this business to increase their profitability by 61%, how many of you would have said 1 month, 3 months, or even 12 months? It is because we did not work on the outcomes, but we worked on the inputs, that you're able to see this level of growth. It seems like my sound has suddenly had some issues. Give me a quick second. And back on. So if I had started off the second part of this exercise by asking how long would it have taken for this business to increase profitability by 61%, chances are a lot of you would have said many months, or in fact, many years. Whereas based on the numbers, and the longest timeline given was 12 months. Many of you said less than 12 months, 1 to 3 to 6 months. It's because you're focusing efforts on what counts rather than just on outcomes, because you cannot push outcomes infinitely. I'm going to do one more example, and then I'm going to ask you to take over and do 5-minute exercise on your own numbers. We're going to do a 100% increase. Now, before I do this, again, I'd like you to pop into the chat box and put down, in terms of number of months, how long should it take to double these numbers? So from the original numbers that you see on the left, if we had to double them, how long would it take in number of months? Four months. Babar, I really want to work with you after this workshop is over, mate. I think I love your enthusiasm. If you're confident you can do it in 4 months, man, me and you're going to do it in 2. Dan, I want to speak to you as well. Good. If you could double your numbers within a couple of months, either it means you're nowhere near your potential right now, or it means you're realizing that there's a lot out there, a lot more than you perhaps thought. Okay. So normally we would have people that say between 1 to 3 years, and I'm not surprised. So for example, Maha is saying 3 years over here. I'm going to say 3 years as well. Not because I don't think it can happen faster, but just because I don't want anyone to think, well, that's not possible. I should say one more thing. I'm going to double these numbers. And some of you are going to have this at the back of your head, particularly if there's any accountants in this room. You can call me Aladdin Maha, I don't mind. If there's any accountants here, they'll be like, oh, that's not possible. You cannot, double your profit margins. That's fine. You can take this any way you want. This is just a mathematical exercise. We're doing a standard 100% across the board. In real life, it's never that neat. Your number of leads will go up 400% and your number of transactions will go up 20% and your margins will stay the same. Or maybe they'll drop because your business is growing and your costs go up. So this is just a mathematical exercise. I want you to understand how it works. The application, of course, is down to you. So let's begin with 100% improvement. 4,000 leads become 8,000. A 25% conversion rate becomes a 50% conversion rate. How many customers? 4,000 customers. So we're still losing as many potential customers, leads, as we had to begin with in the first place. It's not like we're doing unbelievably well. I'm sure there's still growth and still scope to continue improving, but this is a mathematical exercise. So we say 4,000 customers. Number of transactions go from 2 to 4, and the average value of the sale goes from $100 to $200. What's the revenue now? 3, 2, 1. $3.2 million. Margins go from 25% to 50%, which I know will cause some of you to start questioning. Even if you were to keep margins the same, we're going to look at that in a second. 3.2 at 50% margin is a $1.6 million take home. Even if margins stayed at 25%, that's still $800,000. If it took 3 years to go from $50,000 take-home profitability to $1.6 million in terms of take-home profits, would it not be worth it? And for those of you that are in businesses that you're looking to eventually exit, what would this kind of growth mean for your valuations, and what would it mean to your investors? That is a unicorn in the making right there. Some of you are going to be looking at this saying, well, that's all nice in theory. It's quite hard to see these kinds of numbers applied in real life. Of course, it's hard. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. It would no longer be exciting or interesting. It has to be hard. But these are doable. I have seen some of my clients, and I'm going to tell you what the records are, and I challenge anybody here to beat those records. I've had clients get a 612% increase in 90 days. And I've had a client get, so this number from 50 to 1.6, I think this is a 3,200% increase. I've had a client that's had a 3,600% increase within 18 months. And her numbers were very similar to what you're seeing over here, by the way. And I am willing to put this out as a challenge and say, anybody, whoever can beat that record, please do and let me know, because I would love to use you as an example as well. But these are doable. And these two companies are just examples. There are many more companies that have seen these kinds of results and this kind of growth. There's no reason why you can't as well, which begs the question, what would it take if you had to achieve that level of growth? So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this exercise. Of course, we will send you these slides and the presentation later on so that you can continue working on this at your own time as well. I want you to discuss this with your teams. Run your numbers. And I'd like you to do this on 2 levels. I'd like you, so after you put your standard numbers, put down your numbers, put down what 10% increase means, and put down what 100% increase means. And then I want you to ask yourself, if we were able to do that, what would that mean for our company? It's 3:51 on my clock. I'm going to give you until 3:55, and then I'm going to bring you back in, at which point we're going to continue. So for the next couple of minutes, please run these numbers on your own. Some people are asking, what if we don't know our numbers? If you don't know your numbers, work backwards. Start off with your last reporting profit and revenue and work with assumptions. So if you don't know exactly how many customers or how many transactions, go by gut feel and see if the numbers look right. When you're back at the office, you can, or back to work, you can double check your numbers. Okay. Let me start by answering the question that Dana asked, which is, in real life, will we only have one of these areas go up at a time? I want you to look at this slide quite carefully and just answer these questions to yourself. Which department, assuming that you had a fully staffed organization, which department would typically be in charge of increasing number of leads? Answer, marketing, right? Marketing is generally the department that is tasked, and their KPIs are increasing number of leads. You have marketing strategies and sales strategies. Maybe you have your salespeople doing it, but generally this should be a marketing function. Who's in charge of conversions? Which department? Sales. Which department is in charge of increasing the number of transactions? Sales is one, marketing is definitely one, but it really comes down to your operations. Everything around delivery. If I've had a good experience working with you, I will come back to you. And if I have not had a good experience working with you, I will not come back to you regardless of how good your marketing or sales efforts are. So number of transactions, I would say, largely rests on any execution related department. Who's in charge of average sale value? Sales, marketing, operations, typically. They're also in charge of making sure that you're not discounting too much. Who is in charge of maintaining profit margins? If you said accounts, you're only partially correct, because profit margins is everybody's game. If the salespeople are giving too much discount, if you're selling something for, if you're buying something for 70 and you're selling it for 100, and somebody has given me a discount, and you say, okay, I'll give you 15 off, so I'll sell it to you for 85, your cost is still 70. What you've done is you've halved your margin. You haven't changed anything on the cost. So when you're discounting, what you're doing effectively is you're hurting yourself. So everybody's in charge of margins, from the sale all the way to making sure the lights are turned off and making sure that resources aren't being wasted and making sure that people are performing properly in the organization. All of these come under profit margins. So to answer your question, is it only one of them that should go up? No, at least a few at a time should be going up. Maybe not at the same rate. Maybe now you want to focus more on marketing and you don't have too much time to look at operational excellence. So number of leads and conversion is going to go up, and number of transactions and profit margins can stay where they are. That's up to you. But if you have one person at least in charge of each of these areas, all of them can be tasked with targeting 5%, 10% growth in their specific departments in the coming few months. I hope that answers your question, Dana. And if that sounds hard, that's because it is. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's a very simple formula. That doesn't mean it's an easy formula. Now, we talked about the manager banging the table and saying, "Oh, we need 15% more revenue." Oh, we need to do more of what we're doing right now. There's a reply to that, and this reply comes from somebody who's a bit wiser, perhaps, than most of us, which is who is Einstein. And this is a quote from him where he says, "Insanity is repeating the same action and expecting the result to change. It does not change." And if you're doing exactly what you've done and expecting something different to come out, you're setting yourself up for failure and a lot of heartache. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to open for Q&A in just a second. I would like you to take out a few minutes and just fill out this very quick feedback form. So if you could go to the link that's in the chat box, I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to complete that, and then we're going to start with Q&A. So it's 4 o'clock. At 4:03, we're gonna begin Q&A. All right. So let me go through some of the questions that have come in over the course of the workshop and see if we can very, very quickly tap into some of these. If I'm not able to answer your question, or if I can't go into the depth of the question, if I cannot go into the depth that the question deserves because of time, please forgive me. Maybe we can arrange a call after this and go into a little bit more detail. Hassan had a question a little while ago. He said, "We speak about ventures, but all of that sits in the ability of the people involved. How best to identify and build teams in the startup phase and through the organic growth phase?" The core answer to that, I would say, sits in that leadership and culture circle, which is the heart of everything. Particularly when a business is young, you need to have what Reid Hoffman calls cultural co-founders. And these are the people who share your vision, share your beliefs, share your values, share your drive, and are willing to do what it takes to get to that outcome that they know is also possible. When a business is young, like when a child is young, it doesn't take much for it to get hurt really, really badly. Right? If me or you fell off a chair, fell down the stairs, were involved in a car crash, God forbid, we could probably take quite a bit of beating. But a smaller human being would find it very hard to take that level of impact. Same thing with a business. You need to ensure that you're building resilience, but also the people that are running this business are the ones that have its best interest at heart and aren't in it for themselves. So you know that saying, hire slow, fire fast? You need to be very, very conscious of that during your early days. And then it does also come down to your marketing and your communications. If you're just another business in that same industry, you're going to find it very hard to stand out. As a new business with limited resources, what should we put a focus on looking at the present element and how interlinked they are? The owners of the business are downplaying the marketing side. I do not have anything to say except I'm very sorry to hear that. Today morning's planning session, the topic that we covered was marketing through the crisis, and we actually looked at data about why slowing down marketing spend during a crisis is one of the worst things you could do. I understand that there's a cost element to it, and perhaps you need to be more conscious of where money is going. I can try and get you the resources if you email me with a reminder about this. There's one of our partners, Grow. They're a digital agency that did a webinar on this, and I think it's on their LinkedIn profile. So if you just search Grow Digital Marketing Dubai, I think their website is grow.ae. You might be even able to find a recording of the webinar where he said that by cutting marketing costs for 1 year, the impact on revenue was felt for 5 years. It took 5 years to get to pre-cut revenues. And that's because the impact of reducing marketing spend has a very long timeline. So if businesses are being hesitant to spend money on marketing because they just want to save costs, it's a very slippery slope to start going down. What do we do for businesses that are suffering in this industry, in the industry such as F&B and retail? There are certain things which theory cannot solve, and I wish there was an answer. I don't know. Certain industries are taking the brunt of this. Like we had, who was it at the beginning? That said, Manny said, one venture is doing very well, one venture is struggling. it's probably that kind of diversification that you have to be considering at this point in time. We are now 2 minutes past the hour, so I'm going to not take any further questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to email them to hello@kaizen. I would do my absolute best to answer every single question that comes in. I want to leave you with a quote. And this quote is very, very important. This is by somebody who has a great track record of building businesses. And what he says is the principles of running businesses don't change. If you can learn to do them for one business, whatever business you're in right now, if you can learn to manage them properly, manage these principles properly, you can do the same across every business you get involved in. The Kaizen system is one such example of these principles. If you have another one that you're more comfortable with, you're more than welcome to use those. It really is about execution, not just theory. And if there's one thing you've taken away from today, I hope it's how the 5 ways can be implemented in your business and the numbers that you need to start pushing. Which of those 5 ways can you start implementing immediately? Have a really clear direction and a really clear vision. Make sure your team understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then drive it. Track the results, drive it hard, drive it fast, and let's see where it goes. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this webinar. I am more than happy to continue the conversation offline. So please do get in touch if you'd like to connect, and we will send you the resources by tomorrow morning. I hope you've taken something away from today, and I would love to speak to you again soon. Thank you, and have a lovely day ahead.